Welcome to another episode of the Strange Motion Way podcast. I'm your host, Tim Strange, along with my co-host,
Carrie Strange. This week we're going to bring you an amazing one. I love this one. I'm super excited about it.
our first couple.
Yep.
That
Power
we have interviewed.
couple.
Hot rod power couple.
Yep. Ashley
And Corey.
Talbert.
Here we go.
Hey welders, ready to upgrade your gear and save some serious dough in the process? The Miller Build with Blue Savings and Rebate Program has you covered. Find amazing deals and cashback rebates on a wide range of Miller products, from welders to plasma cutters and everything in between, all backed by our 3-year warranty. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Take advantage of the Miller Build with Blue program now. Visit us online or stop by your nearest Miller distributor today to start saving.
So here we are at another episode of the Strange Motion Way podcast. I am your host, Tim Strange, along with...
Carrie Strange.
And this is our first... A lot of times me and Carrie are on here together, but this is the first time we've interviewed another couple. So we might have a struggle getting all the information because they both have some amazing stories. So we have Corey and Ashley Talbert. Ashley grew up in the hot rod industry, working with her amazing dad and one of my hot rod heroes, Dan Webb. And she also, the coolest thing she does, she runs an Instagram page called The Cat Rodders. That's the coolest thing. And Corey, also a Midwest second-generation hot rodder. He works for GM during the day. And together they have been a part of or worked on some incredibly, that's a big word for me, memorable projects in the last decade. So usually we do a lot more introduction. But we're just going to say, welcome, Corey and Ashley, a hot rod power couple.
Well, thanks for having us.
For having
we appreciate it.
So who you want to start with first? First, you have something that you want to ask
I
them.
do. I was really excited because I was kind of thinking about that we're interviewing this young couple. And then I got your email address and it was a Hotmail. And I'm like, wow. They're almost as old as we are. I haven't seen Hotmail forever.
Hey, I still got an AOL address that I'm still active.
It's convenient.
Hotmail, does that still exist?
They like old hot rods and old email addresses, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We did Dave Shutton a month ago or so, and he had no computer and no iPad, but he could do it on his smartphone. So he says he repels technology. So
Yeah.
So at least you're a step ahead of him. But. So let's start with Ashley. We've known Ashley a little longer. We've known Ashley since she was a little bitty grommet running around. What did she always drag around? Didn't she have a bunny rabbit or something you always had with you at the shows?
Oh, I don't remember. Probably had something a long time ago, of course.
Yeah. So how did you get, I know how you got into hot rods, but tell everybody else that doesn't know your story how you got into hot rods, Ashley.
So I always say I was born into it. There's photos when I was just a baby in my dad's shop and around projects. He restored early race cars and Ferraris, and there was always photos of me in the shop and in the cars and all that. And fast forward to about 1990, he won the Riddler Award at Detroit Autorama. And of course, we did all the show circuit and always in the shop. And then fast forward to SEMA projects, all the trucks, and probably from 1995 to maybe like 2004 or 5. And those were all through Duraliner. So I was always around that stuff, the trucks that he was building. And then my Roadster came out in 2005.
Okay, you're going way too fast. We need to slow down and get a little bit more.
Okay.
A lot of us remember, if you look at some pictures back then, you had the coolest tricycle ever.
Bicycle and tricycle, yeah, that was probably, I remember, I think the tricycle was in 2000, so the bicycle would have been before that. They were both hand built.
So wait a minute, you were young enough in 2000 to still have a tricycle?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. They are our young couple that
He just turned 38 last Monday, and I'm going to be 37. So here next month.
Well, happy belated birthday.
Yeah. So you're still like we are. We're from the 1900s.
Yeah.
Sounds bad, but our BMX kids tell us that we sponsor that
But
you're old.
I've always been around this stuff. I've been fortunate enough. Got to meet a lot of cool people, like you guys. See a lot of cool stuff. Go to a lot of cool events, and just experience a lot of things that people don't get to experience. So I thought it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool industry, and I competed with my car in 2007 at Grand National Roadster Show, and I was the first youngest female to compete at that time. So it was pretty cool. And then met this guy, and we just do hot rodding together, drive across the country, and just have a good time. So, and I still work at my dad's shop every day, project managing, ordering materials and keeping him in line, doing social media, website, anything that needs to be done around there. So
because we all know if Dan Webb likes a post on Instagram, it ain't him doing it.
No,
we all
him.
know that.
It is him.
Is it?
He
really?
Don't post, but he likes. So
I feel honored now. I've got a couple, maybe 2 a year. I get a like from Dan Webb. So yeah. So how old do you remember first being in the shop and helping? Did you sweep the floors? Which, whenever somebody shows on social media a teaser picture on some cool hot rod, the floor always gives it away on where they are. The tile floor in the fab shop there is like, it makes me always want, like, I think I need a tile floor in my shop. So how old were you when you were out there?
How old was I? Growing up, the shop was always behind the house, so I was there all the time. So
I picture your dad right next to like his row of welders and Burkings. He's got more Burkings belt sanders than anybody I think I know. Yeah. And I just picture like your bouncy chair was sitting in the middle there.
Yeah, he didn't have that then. He didn't have that stuff then. But yeah, I was counting the Burkings yesterday, and there's 10 there, so a little overload.
Yeah, so I was right. Yeah. And so that's like some people, they work at a gas station or a grocery store. You've just always worked for your dad.
Yep, always worked for my dad, and I always think, what else would I do, or what else would I like to do? But I enjoy being with him every day, able to be creative. If I need to go somewhere, to events, I'm able to, because he's a pretty cool boss. He'll say, yeah, go ahead, So if we go on a road trip, he's like, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much history of your dad's stuff. Well, I'm going to get my leg over here. Because hopefully you can sweet talk him to be, and I'd love to get him on the podcast too.
Oh, yeah.
He's only done one that I've heard that was the Roadster Shop, and it was absolutely amazing. Yeah. And I've always looked up to your dad. I remember one time I was up there when we was filming the TV show that I was on, and we were filming around Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I called him, and I was like, hey, I'm in the area for the next couple of days. Are you free any of these next 2 evenings? He goes, well, maybe. I go, can I come by the shop? No. He met me in some random parking lot just to shoot the crap for a half hour and would not let me come to the shop because it was full of like Ford SEMA stuff at that time. I was like, dude, I just want to see the shop. I'm not going to take any pictures.
Yeah. Nope, well, that was another phase of everything, doing the auto show work, and we had to kind of sign papers that stuff couldn't be seen. So
yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
and you've done Ford cutaway motors for years when that was a thing. And remember you've told some random, and then you would get them back after trade shows. What's the most random stuff you found inside a cutaway motor?
Oh gosh. Well, maybe hot dog wrappers. I think there was a tampon in one. So.
That's what I remember. You told that story. Bubble gum and stuff you expect, but why would somebody put a tampon in a motor?
Yeah, we were always refurbing them because they always got messed up on the road. I mean, because they went all over the world, so from travel to people manhandling them. So that was a fun time. But yeah.
So they freeze. Are they there?
Yep.
You lost them.
We got you.
We got you.
It's technology. It's great.
You back?
There. There you
Okay.
are. We lost you there for a minute. Okay, so we're gonna start like, how old were you guys when you started dating, and then we'll stop there, and then we'll go back and get Corey's history up until that point.
Okay.
Well, we started dating in 2009, so
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember. I think you walked up with Corey. I think we were. I don't know what we was in the Ford booth with something that you guys had debuted, and I think it was either me and Zane or me and Kenny, or it could have been all three of us. And we looked at yeah, and we just looked at Corey and was like, well, he's got bigger balls than we do. And then we all kind of looked at him and said something like, you see, like all these guys around here our age, Ashley's our little sister, and if you screw up, we're going to come get you. And you just looked at it and says, I'm good. I'm good. So I was like, yeah, okay, this kid's cool. So, Corey, let's go back to your history. I've met your dad quite a few times, and actually I walked up to him at Des Moines this year because his Suburban kind of sticks out. Am I talking too loud?
Yeah.
Yes.
I get talking too loud, and she writes loud over here, but it's kind of a salmon color, and I walk up and I go, you have any kids that grew up that weren't an asshole? And he goes, oh, Corey. So I always harass him when I see him. So so let's go back. And obviously you're a second generation. Your dad's a hot rod guy. Tell a little bit about that and how you actually decided you want to be in the hot rods.
Well, I kind of had no choice otherwise, too. I grew up in it. My parents always had some type of old car project, going back to, my dad had a T-bucket. I remember going to, Mid-American Nationals, Street Rod Nationals, Americruise. We traveled everywhere in it, and, eventually graduated up to a 37 Ford Coupe that I wired when I was 11. And
Oh, wow.
A lot of stuff was, it was figure out how to do it yourself because we didn't have a lot of spare money, to pay to have stuff done. So, you figured out how to weld stuff, you figured out how to wire stuff. My dad painted the coupe in the garage in a Visqueen booth. And then if you had, a friend that had a trade that he was good at, you figured out how to trade labor. Mm-hmm. And so, that was a really cool environment growing up in. Everybody was helping each other out, trying to get their cars going and stuff like that. And even prior to that, I remember my parents bought me a 32 Ford like Roadster go-kart. And actually, I think I was probably on the front edge of that.
Freaks me out.
Like good guys would allow it. And I remember, I think I got to go to Americruise one time with it. And then they actually like.
Okay, just in case it didn't record, back up and say what on our end you dropped out what they bought you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So they bought me like a 32 Ford Roadster go-kart. And we would take it to shows, I was like 6 at the time. And, we had it at Good Guys Des Moines, Americruise, like in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I was probably like on the front edge of that because they eventually like wrote in the show rules like to not allow that stuff. So, but
does that mean you ran into somebody's car?
So, hey, no kidding. My parents had State Farm insurance. So like I was good to go if I ran into somebody. Fortunately, like I never had an accident.
So how old were you at this time?
That was like 6 years old, and I would drive this
cool
go-kart around fairgrounds and stuff. But no, so I grew up.
I kind of missed that of like around the rod runs that I used to go to up when I lived up in Illinois growing up. Everybody had cool little like, they'd put a go-kart underneath a bumper car, or they had this vintage mini bike, but then somebody got drunk and whiskey throttled and hit something, and now they don't allow it. But then I just got back from the Tri-5 Nationals. Any event at Bowling Green is full of golf carts, so I kind of understand why now it's about every show you go to now is the Scooter Nationals. So,
but yeah, so I mean, we always had projects going on. The first car that I worked on that was really like my car was a 1930 Chevy 2-door sedan that my dad had given me. It was a project that had been around the house, and in high school went through the whole thing. Built a chassis for it, and it was more of a street rod with air ride and stuff like that. And kind of during that time is when I discovered traditional hot rods, and that really started to pique my interest and kind of change, of really what I enjoyed and stuff like that.
And what state did you grow up in?
So I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas, just a suburb of Kansas City. So
it's a good hot rod scene down there. Very good hot rod scene.
Good hot rod scene. Good music scene. Good barbecue.
Freaks me out when it happens.
You drop out again?
Yeah, it's all right.
You're back now.
Okay. Yeah, let me check here. I think we're looking. You know what? Let me try one thing here. We'll see if it improves. I'm going to come back to disconnected. Okay, we got you back? We got you back?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if that
Yes.
We're here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So that area is a very good hot rod scene. And what was your first car that you drove like to school in high school?
Oh, I had an OBS truck, 92 GMC extended cab. That super clean truck. Of course, the cab corners were rusted. That was the only bad part about it. Yeah. So another thing, traded labor. Had cab corners put on it and truck repainted. I did the 89 to 93 Cadillac DeVille tail lights. All this stuff at that time, right? Yeah. But for a high school kid, like that was a big deal. And of course, had Beltec 5.7 drop on it and stuff like that.
So what year was this that you had a 92? I'm building a 92 OBS for myself right now.
That was, let's see, I think I got a sophomore of high school. So that was probably like 2003. Yeah, around.
Okay, yeah, it wasn't a new. I was going to call you a rich kid if you had, because I could never afford an OBS back in the day, so that's why I'm building one now. But yeah, in the Midwest, when those things started losing the cab quarters and stuff, you could get them for a song. And now we live in Tennessee, and you can still buy ones down here that don't need cab corners. Heck, when I still worked at the Chevy dealership, under warranty, we were still fixing bedsides and cab corners.
Oh, wow.
On those that rusted when they had like 30,000 miles on them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ashley, what was your first car that you drove in high school?
Oh, no. It was a 2001 Explorer Sport, but it had big wheels on it, 20s, and a big stereo, so lowered. So,
was it one that you guys bought, or was it one of your guys' SEMA projects?
Bought. It was bought.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad never let you drive the SEMA projects?
No. They were too wild.
We did those for 12. Well, we didn't do one every year. We went on an 8-year run with GM for SEMA vehicles, and so she had a new vehicle every year to drive. I kind of missed the.
Yeah.
It was a hassle when you did it, but man, now everything. My Duramax has 250,000 was the last GM that we get, and them guys don't even show up at SEMA anymore. So it's kind of lucky back then.
Yeah, we were for sure. That was a good time.
Okay, Corey, are you taking any automotive classes in high school or anything? Was anything like that offered around there? Or were you just working in the shop?
We had auto tech, I think 1 and 2. There was classes around like engineering based stuff, and of course that piqued my interest. But yeah, like auto shop and all that stuff was a pretty fun time. We had a good group of friends that like were all interested in cars, enjoyed working on stuff. Our high school had good auto shop programs, had good music programs. That was one thing I enjoyed. I actually played drums back then. I still do a little bit, but like we had teachers that really fostered music and stuff like that. So it was a really cool environment to grow up in.
Very cool. So out of high school, did you go to a trade school or a college to get to GM that you're at now?
Well, as I was getting towards the end of high school, I was looking at different paths. One was to go to Pittsburgh State University, Pittsburgh, Kansas. That was maybe more trade-based. University of Kansas for mechanical engineering. And that was actually like senior year of high school. I was going there. Fortunately, I had a scholarship. And then I found out about the school I went to, which is Kettering University. It's actually GM's former engineering school in Flint, Michigan. Found out about it and went to do a visit and kind of figured out that's really a good program. And so changed my course plan for, the very end of high school and went to Flint. And it was really good. It's a co-op college. So it's a standard college, but part of the requirement is you have to co-op, or it's basically internships, so many times at an engineering company. So when you graduate, not only do you have a bachelor's degree, but you actually have like experience. You have at least 2.5 years of work experience.
Oh,
And that
wow.
was like by far the most valuable part of that school was when you graduated, you actually worked somewhere and understand how stuff worked. It wasn't going to school and then showing up like green somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
What place did you do your intern stuff at?
So I did most of it in Kansas City at the Fairfax assembly plant. So at that time, it's building like the Chevy Malibu and Saturn Aura. Um, uh, Looking back, the manufacturing environment is a very intense environment. Like if you think about it, like the line's got to run. Like you do whatever you can to make the line run because that's sprint money for the company. It was a good experience.
I've seen that movie. What was that movie? Gung Ho or something like that? It's like an '80s movie about when the foreign guys come over to Detroit or something, and you got to keep it was a no if something broke down and you had to hit the stop for the main line. Everybody thought the place was going to explode or something. So it has to be true. It was in a movie from the '80s. So.
But no, it was a good experience, but it also taught me that was not what I wanted to do for a living. And I got one of my internships to come to Southeast Detroit or Southeast Michigan to the Detroit area for GM and worked in what we call product development. And that's like your core engineering of, from clay models to getting it to the plant. And I really liked that, really enjoyed it. So when I graduated, I did what I could to wind up here in Michigan. And that's ultimately what happened.
Yeah, there was a short time in my life that I thought that I wanted to go. I was interested in the clay modeling stuff, but I know I didn't want to go to college. Really, I went to auto body school because I could stay at home and drive there, and and I didn't want to get college loans and student loans and stuff. But so then you end up in Detroit. Of course, Ashley's in Detroit. When did this connection start? Do you guys remember like meeting at a show when?
Yeah.
I just got done doing the Tri-5 show, which Chris Sondels runs, and me and him met at a Tri-5 show in 1981. I was 11, he was 12, and we played in the swimming pool together.
Okay.
Do you have any like your go-kart run into her tricycle story or anything like that?
We were at a
Bulletproof and
we didn't know each other, but we were at Columbus when we were young, both
oh
of us.
yeah,
like in 1991.
yeah.
But we met 2009 at Bulletproof, so here in Davisburg, Michigan. It's like a traditional show. He had his little 34 pickup, and I was there with my dad, and I think, what do you have? You had quarter elliptical, on the back of the truck, and of course Dan's all into that, so we walked up there, and Corey.
Okay, stop a minute. Do you call your dad Dan, or only when you're talking about him?
Just talking about him.
Okay, you can say Dad, and we know who he's talking about. Like, I gave Dan such a hard time after the Roadster Shop podcast. He never mentioned Corey's name. He kept saying, my son-in-law. And I was like, well, he's obviously proud of him because he bragged about some of the stuff that we'll get to here. But I was like, well, was this so like, if Ashley gets another husband, they don't have to go back to date. It's way less uncomfortable.
That's what I figured. It never goes out of date, right?
Yeah. So he appreciates your skill that things that you have done, but maybe you're not fully accepted into the family yet. I don't. It's kind of like for years, my mom would never give Carrie her secret frosting recipe for her sugar cookies. We finally got it when my mom passed away, and my sister gave us the recipe. So my mom never fully accepted Carrie. So it could be the same thing.
But you can tell them the rest of the story if you want.
Well, yeah, I guess I have to preface the story. So we're college kids. Me and my roommate took my 34 pickup down to, it was Davisburg, like a 20-minute drive from the school. And, of course, we had probably been up the night before, imbibing a little bit and a little hungover. And so we were going to leave. And Dan and Ashley walked up, and I knew of Dan. I'd read about him, but I had no idea what he looked like. And so somebody walks up to ask a question about the truck, and I may have sort of blew it off thinking that it was somebody asking a dumb question. So, I answered it, and then I got like, you should stop by the shop sometime and with an arm out with the business card. And I'm reading the business card. I'm like, oh shit. And so I left pretty good.
Right. Okay. Now I'm jealous. Right from the start, he gets invited to the shop. Right from the start. Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you just set the bar low, you exceed expectations from there. So it's worked out pretty well.
And how old were you guys at that time?
Oh man, here you're making us do math.
I know, early 20s.
Yeah, early 20s. Yeah.
Cool. So did you go by the shop?
So that semester we couldn't link anything up because I was only there till I think like June. Then I was going back to Kansas to work for the summer, and so I don't think I got over there until
we seen each other again at Detroit Autorama.
Yeah, like 6 months later.
And then after that,
yeah.
So there wasn't like, I could get Corey in trouble here. There wasn't like a spark, and it was like, I got to go to this Dan Webb guy's shop because his daughter's smoking hot. There was no big sparks. There was like, where you knew who he was, but you never met him before. Was there like, I can't date Dan Webb's daughter?
I was probably still reeling from some embarrassment.
So then how long after that first meeting at Billet Proof until you guys went out on your first date?
Right after Detroit Autorama, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And I didn't, I seen him again down in the basement. He had his truck there, but I didn't get his phone number. So I had to write somebody afterwards. I'm like, hey, that kid with the 34 pickup, do you have his phone number?
Oh, so Ashley was making the first move. And for people that has never been to Detroit, they have a basement section. It wasn't like Ashley and her friends are hanging out in a dungeon basement someplace. It's the downstairs at Detroit Autorama.
Yeah. So, I think we started dating like in April.
Yeah.
So then we dated a couple of years and got married in 2012. Mm-hmm. So we got married at the NHRA Museum. We had a hot rod wedding. So
with Kenny Davis as the officiant.
Davis was our ordained minister.
Because I was ordained at that time when I let you know, and they're like, "Oh, we got Kenny," and I think I probably said, "Well, good luck with that," or something.
No, I think you said, "I don't think I would want to marry Ashley because I'm afraid of dad."
I'd be scared of Ashley's dad. Yeah, if something goes wrong. So
yeah.
I just got to hang out with Kenny last weekend at Tri-Fives for a little bit. So.
He's
good dude. Known that guy for probably 35 years. So, he's never called me for bail money, but it's not over yet. Yeah,
maybe called you on his deathbed.
His wife called me when he crashed out Willie's that time. Yeah, there's been many times when Kenny was and his four-wheel. Kenny has agreed to do our podcast, so that's going to be a good one.
That's good. Yeah. That'd be a good one.
So since you asked for his number, did you call him first?
I think I found him on Facebook, so I didn't text him or call him right away. I stalked him on Facebook and wrote him. So
so that's got to be like the coolest wedding ever, to have the pull to get married at the museum.
Yeah, and we had it was during the LA Roadster show, so we debuted our Roadster that year. We just got the interior done from Sid, so we actually picked it up in Northern California, drove it down the coast before the wedding, and got married that weekend. And we had about 100 of our hot rod friends there. So,
that was your little wedge Roadster?
No, our 32 Roadster that
the black. Oh, okay.
So,
So the wedge Roadster was before that. Let's go back and talk about Ashley with the. We had Tom Taylor on here, which is still amazing. Tom doesn't really do interviews. We did him, and we're going to do a part 2. We got to visit and jabbering so much, and I believe you guys worked with Tom Taylor on the design of that car.
Yeah, he designed it. So my dad had an idea of what he wanted to do, and gave Tom the ideas, and they came up with that, and that we debuted it in 2005, like I said, at SEMA, and I think it was a couple-year build, and it was cool because I was able to be involved in the whole build. It's not like I just, here's your car. My dad made me, every step of the way, so it was fun.
I remember standing, and I remember I was with Zane Cullen at SEMA that year, and your dad was like, get down there and look at my welds. And he's always bragging about his welds, and he is absolutely amazing welder. And he goes, count the puddles on the rear end brackets on both sides. They're the same. And me and Zane's like, we'll just take your word for it, man. We're not going to get down there and count the weld puddles on your rear end. So, yeah, he was very proud of that. And, he knew me and Zane couldn't count that high anyway.
Yeah, something's not perfect. He's redoing it. So,
So that car went on, was in Rider's Journal.
Yep,
was it in Street Rider too?
Yes, it was in Street Rider a little later on, but it was on the cover of Rider's Journal. Went to a bunch of shows. Like I said, then it went to Grand National, competed for AMBR. I was the youngest female at the time. It took home, it took home the Foose Design Award. And then at SEMA, it took home the Heritage Best of Show that year. So
very cool. And you still own that car, right?
Yeah, it's actually behind us here in the camera.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I knew it was in the house because I seen on the Cat Rodders page that your cat was standing on it or something one day.
Yeah. Yep, it's in the house. So, yeah.
So another question before we move on from the Wedge Roadster: have you ever let Corey drive the car?
No, he hasn't even heard it run since we've been together.
Never heard it run.
Once we were done with it, we were done with it. So put it in the house.
So that's why your dad still calls him the son-in-law.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Ashley's accepted you yet either, there, Corey. So.
Yeah. Just once we were done with it, done. So, yeah.
Yep, I get it. My 54 hasn't ran in.
I don't even know how long.
Yeah, I tried. It was in a museum for 5 years, and it hasn't run since it come out of the museum. So it's hard on them when they sit too.
Yeah,
so.
That's what my dad always says. He enjoys the building it more than like driving it and all the after.
Yeah.
Pain in the butt when they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got her Corvair that it's been done. It went to SEMA, 9 years ago now, I think?
10.
10?
Oh, wow.
And she's had a couple people want to buy it. She goes, nobody's going to give me what I want for a hot rod Corvair with a motor in the front. Mm-hmm. So she purposely has never finished the trunk upholstery, so it's technically not done to sell.
Yeah.
She's not done.
Good idea.
Yeah. I try to drive it every month.
So you're talking about your Roadster that you got done for the wedding. Tell everybody about that and how many miles you've had on it and all the cool road trips you guys have done.
Well, it was a Brookville bodied 32 highboy, kind of the cliche black, Roadster, flathead powered, had a H&H built 284 cubic inch flathead, 5-speed, and Hellebrand quick change. Kind of a fairly traditional style car. It was done in 2012. Well, we actually had it done in April to Lone Star Roundup, but it didn't have interior
finished. Yeah,
we just had a blanket over a rough foam seat that I built for it. Then it went to Sid's, and it was done for our wedding. And we did, like Ashley said, we drove from Sid's place down to LA, so it was almost like a kind of pre-honeymoon sort of. So that was kind of a cool trip. But with that car, we owned it it was on the road for, I don't know, nine or so years when we had it. And I lost count how many states it was in. I don't know, we had about 20,000 miles on it. Just a super reliable car. It was simple, good driving car. And in 2018, we did kind of a cool road trip. We drove it from our house here in Detroit to San Francisco in 4 days. So that was like 3,000 miles roughly, I think.
And we stopped along the way to the Hot Rod Hill climb and to Bonneville, and we left it out at Daryl's, I think, for some touch up, and then it went down to Grand National for AMBR that year, the following year. So
and that was I was talking to Daryl. I wanted to be in. Everybody wants to be in Building 4, to have a car, and Daryl's like, "We'll just put it in for AMBR." So I was like, well, that is like the best parking spot you're going to get. So, So, we had the car detail, so it looked good for having 20,000 miles. I don't think probably a lot of people believed it was a, 9-year-old car at that time. But no, it looked pretty good. And we had Josh Shaw. We had a Rand McNally Atlas map of the U.S. and Josh
drew out the map, drew out our route. So it was kind of cool. So it was beside the car for Grand National, and I mean, not many people get to say, "Hey, we drove it here," So
I did that Of course,
Yeah,
it wasn't competing for any big
Yeah.
awards. Yeah, it was in building whatever they always have the Invite building. The one year it was trucks and vans, and the Royal Purple panel truck that we
Yep.
did.
Yeah, I
I
remember
mean, that was just a road dog driver. It wasn't a big show vehicle.
Yeah.
And the guy that bought it after the contract was up with Royal Purple is my friend Noel Irvin from Houston. So I flew down there and we drove it out. And one morning it was snow. The air ride was iced up. We had ice one day, snow one day. Every day we had a small mechanical problem, like a bolt was falling out of an air ride, but we made it there. And then you guys can both figure this out because you guys have done it. It was super cool as a Midwest kid that never even thought I'd get to the Roadster show to drive all the way out with my buddy. And we got there a couple days early. So before we even put it in the building, we drove around to hot rod shops in Orange and everything, and went to Jimmy Shine's and Anvil and Chris Coddington's place and Mikey Curtis's place. And just as a little Midwestern kid, we just had the time of our life. And then since it's a display only room, we cleaned it halfway down the middle. And then my buddy Randy Borcherding from the Paint House put a bunch of pictures because he's a good photographer on the side to show that we drove it. And I didn't really clean it good after that. And then it was hard to get that salt and stuff from the iced roads off of everything. So
Cool. Very cool. But
So you don't own that 32 anymore?
No, so we kept it out in the LA area after Grand National in 19.
we did LA Roadster Show with it.
Yeah.
And
it was one of those things like we talked about. I was like, what else are we going to do with the car that we haven't already done? So it's like it's probably time to let somebody else enjoy it and put a for sale sign on it, and it wound up
that weekend.
Yeah, it was gone that weekend. So, and it was cool. You know, the guy that bought it ended up becoming a good friend. He still calls like every 2 weeks just to BS. I remember like the first time he called, I'm like, oh no, something's wrong. And, like,
Send
you
it
know,
to voicemail.
he would ask like a question, but that was just his foot in the door just to BS. And now we don't even talk about the car. So it's cool just, you know, having friendships from stuff like that.
Yeah, and some people don't understand. It's like some people build their one dream car, then they keep that one car forever. And I always sell them, one, because I can't afford to keep them all, and I got a list of cars that I want to build. So, and I know that's your guys' case. So what came after the 32 Roadster?
we had a 40 Ford for a while.
Yeah, a standard two-door sedan. That was
Lowered with a
I
flathead.
forgot about that. That's the one that Colin from Max Tie Downs bought, right?
He ended up
I
buying
forgot
it.
about that car.
Yeah, that's a good car. We just seen it last year at the gathering at the Rock again. I'm like, oh man, I kind of miss that car. That's a fun car. But and we had a 32.
And that was flathead powered too?
Yeah, that was a 54,000 mile original black paint car.
So, okay, explain the flathead phenomenon to me. I love flatheads. I love the sound of flatheads. I love the look of flatheads, long as they're somebody else's.
It's. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's the look and the sound is unmatched. I think people get maybe caught up in the low horsepower, and they are low horsepower. I mean, they're a Briggs Stratton lawnmower engine times 8, right? But there's good torque. I mean, they drive well, but it's never going to replace a high horsepower small block Chevy. So I think as long as you have that mindset going into it, it's going to meet your expectations. I will say the black Roadster with that flathead and a T5 behind it and the rear end geared well, that car surprised a lot of people who might look down on a flathead. I remember at the hill climb, actually the year we were driving to San Francisco, I gave a guy a ride in the car, and when we launched to go up the hill, he immediately turned around and grabbed a hold of the top iron because I don't anticipate the car was actually going to run that well.
Yeah, because this year at Columbus, Henry from Steadfast drove that stretched Model A truck over in bare metal and with a flathead. And Henry likes to go down the road pretty fast. He goes, "That is the slowest I've ever got here driving this flathead thing." But and then at Louisville, I got to hang out. I visited on a slow day with John Hall. And I think those new flatheads, when he gets those ready, them are going to be a little life changer, I think, in the flathead circles.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So after that was your green 5-window after you sold that car to
maroon 32.
Yeah, we had 32
window.
5 window. So I think we had the 40 sedan, sold that, got 32 5 window. And that was a car we bought from our friend Reggie Hill. It was a flathead powered highway.
And then we did Race of the Gentleman with it.
Yeah, and then
And
came back
and redid it.
Yeah, we pulled it apart and small blocked it, put fenders on it, and chopped it. Had Bill Ganal come out and give me a hand chopping the car, which was another good friend that I met through Daryl Hollenbeck, and that's a cool experience. I wanted a hand chopping the car, and I really didn't want to ask Dan. Just if I would have asked Dan, it would have been a debate of
how much.
I wanted to chop it a lot. I knew Dan, he'd be more on the conservative side. So we were walking around Columbus and we were talking about it. And Ashley's like, well, why don't you just ask Bill to come help out? So I wasn't going to cold call Bill, but I sent him a text of, hey, if I bought you a plane ticket, would you come help me chop the coupe? And he just sends back, yeah. And then he came out that fall and we had like a 3-day weekend and we chopped the car and got it, roughed out and stuff. And I finished all the welding after that.
I think so. Talk about that. I think I'm waiting to get him on the podcast, Bill Ganal from South City, because huge fan, great dude, awesome sense of humor. His wife's super rad. He goes, yeah, everybody loves my wife more than me. Same thing here too. And but every other 2 weeks he's on somebody else's podcast. So I'm waiting for his flame to distinguish down a little bit, but I don't think it's going to. Same thing with Rick Love. He's on one every week, and I can't get Rick Love, and I want to give a little gap so that everybody will listen to everybody else's podcast. But I think a lot of Bill and what he does. And so talk about that some. Like, you've went out and helped Daryl on projects, and you've went out to South City and helped, and vice versa. Like, you've went and helped wire because you're really good at, what do you call that when you wax?
Cable lacing. It's a wire management technique from, at least World War II, probably before that. But basically before zip ties, you tie stuff together with a wax-coated string. And it's a pretty cool look. But yeah, so I met Bill because that black Roadster that we drove all over, it got a repaint in like 14. And Daryl did the repaint. And so the car went out to him. And I think...
Which some of you people, we just brush over these names, but sometimes I like to jump in and explain to them some of these people are that maybe not know these people. They're talking about Daryl Hollenbeck at Vintage Color Studio in Northern California, multiple Hall of Famer. I don't know how many AMBRs that he's painted, but hands down one of the best painters, and messed up sense of humors in the industry. That's why I like him.
Yeah. And so our car went out to Daryl's, and he was going to strip it and repaint it. And I think he was talking to Dan one day, and Daryl had bought a Brookville Roadster project because he always wanted a 32. But, obviously that's not his forte, right? It's paint. And so I think the project kind of set in the corner. And I think Dan made a joke of, well, when they drop off our car, just throw your car on the truck and have it come back. And, well, that's basically what happened. And then Dan and I took the project apart and built it, pretty much all the fab that you see on the car today. And then when our Roadster was done, Daryl's car was done, we swapped again. And then it went out there, and of course Daryl did what he's good at, paint and body work. And then it went to Bill Ganal's for final assembly because Bill and Daryl were good friends from, when they first met back in the Brizio days. And so I flew out in April of, I think it was 15, to wire the car. So that's my first time meeting Bill. We went to a shop, and really, that's really where our friendship began there. But I mean, just really a great group of guys overall with Joey Capani and Donnie Welch, Ryan Campy, all those guys that hang out there.
Big Joe.
Yeah. Joe DiBattista, just, awesome group of guys that put out some good product.
Yeah. And they're what I call the next generation with you guys too, behind like guys like me and Zane and Daryl are kind of like the same age, and you guys are all that next generation. We're old is what I'm saying.
You're getting old.
Definitely the hot rodding is definitely good hands with all those guys that you just talked about out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But no, so, as you're saying, Bill and I, well, I'll help out Bill on CAD projects and stuff. So, he might call me up and say, hey, I want to make this part for this car. And, we have a good sense of understanding each other, what he wants from a design standpoint. And I have a pretty good idea of what it takes to maybe make something from CAD to, you have it in a file, then you actually have to make the thing. So it's not always easy. It's just machining it, so I've helped Bill out on some projects probably since 2019, 2020, I think. And doing
See,
more.
that's the technology that I have never even dipped my toe in. I've worked with some guys, and maybe because my how do you call it, old guy thought process, I have trouble getting my head around some of that. And then I've also realized a couple of the guys I've worked with weren't quite as good as what I thought they were. But like the 3D printing and all that stuff, I just say it's alien technology. But you can design something, and you can print it out, and then test like an air cleaner or something, and then you machine it.
Makes it a lot easier. We're doing that with the new build at my dad's shop. We're 3D printing everything before it gets machined, and it just makes it a lot more to be able to see
So
it.
is your dad doing any of that, or is his son-in-law handling that part
His
for him?
son-in-law.
Okay.
He draws it on paper like what he wants, but that gets you nowhere. So
That's why I like your dad. We come from the old school
he's
way.
old school.
Yeah. So okay, let's go back to before we jump back and talked about all the buddy system there. Bill came out and helped chop the 5-window.
Yeah. Yep.
And then that's got a caddy motor in it, right?
Well, so that car, the 32 is a maroon car. It had a 57.
Oh, I forgot. I was thinking about the green
car. Well, so
I forgot about the other one.
Yeah, so he also came on that car too.
Him and Donnie came on that one.
Yeah,
so.
and it was the same thing. I got that project that came from Prescott, Arizona, and then I put a photo up of it, I think, online, and Bill's like, "Let me know when you want me to come into town to chop it." So
how long did you have? I forgot about the 32 that you were talking about. How long did you have that before you moved on to the other 5-window?
Right. Well, so there's a bit of overlap there because you always have a car that's kind of done that you enjoy, and then you figure out how to scrap together funds to buy another project car and work on it in the background and stuff. So we had the 32 5-window for 10 years, and then moved it down the road too. Kind of the same thing. It was like, what else can we do with it? It's time to let somebody else enjoy it.
Yeah.
And but yeah, the 33, we got that project in 2018, and kind of started working on it. Well, we chopped it in 2018, then it kind of went on the back burner.
So we were moving. So.
Yeah. And but no, another cool project. Bill came out, Donnie Welch came out, and we thrashed on it for a long weekend again. Had a lot of fun in the nighttime and stuff, and it's fun looking back to. Just think about, them taking time out of their busy schedule to come out and help me out.
Now everybody's going to think, oh, Bill and Donnie will come back and help me chop my car. So.
Hey, there's a price for everything. I'm sure they would. Yeah. So you got that thing done. What's his name painted that one? Snowpeck? Am I saying his name right?
Yep. Yeah. Matt Snowpeck. He's local to us over in Macomb.
I've never met him in person, but I follow him. I'm a big fan of his work too. Very good.
Yeah, he's got a good work ethic. Just him, and I think he's got 2 employees, so they work pretty hard. But yeah, he painted that in 2020. Yeah, I think 2020.
We debuted it at Gathering at the Rock that year.
Yeah,
it didn't have interior finished,
but yeah, that car was a cool exercise in meshing. Some modern technology and old style stuff. There's a lot of CAD in that car. The wheels are cast.
You designed and made the wheels too, right?
Yeah, they're cast magnesium wheels that I did all the CAD modeling for. But then they're actually cast mag because I wanted there's nothing cooler than oxidized gray magnesium. And
how hard is it to find somebody that will do a small run? I grew up in a super small town that used to have a foundry, and you could go in and get stuff done, but the runs, it wasn't for a hot rod shop. You're not going to do, a set of wheels. Did you get that because of all the manufacturing in Detroit, or did you have to send it away from Detroit?
No. So, anything I work on at work is all high volume, right? So the kind of stuff that I'm doing is, it's a mom and pop shop realistically if I'm working with somebody. Same thing with the wheels, they were what I would call a low volume custom shop. And, that was right up their alley doing one-offs or handful offs. No, I mean, it was cool. Everybody's machining stuff today. Very cool. We had machined wheels on the 32.5 window that Mike Curtis did. I just wanted corroded mag, and the only way to get there is mag, and the cheapest way to get there is cast them. You can machine mag. Mike Curtis, we talked, and he's like, I can do it, but
It's 3 times the cost.
yeah, like the material cost at that time was 3 times that of aluminum. So, it's a cool process, and it's the same thing with kind of like 3D printing. We use a similar process to make the molds, because with casting, that's a high volume application. Like you're making a pattern that costs a lot of money, but then from there, like it's spitting out cheap castings. So this is a bit of the other way around. We don't have a pattern. It costs a little bit more money to make each mold, but it's perfect for these special one-off castings.
And then your mold could be a little less, not really quality, but it doesn't have to do 10,000 wheels. You're only doing
exactly
basically 2, right? Because they weren't directional. So a left and right for the fronts and a bit different diameter for the back.
Actually, it's the same wheel all around. So,
is it the same?
Yeah, it just looks different.
Okay.
With different size tire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. And that, did Sid do the interior in that too?
Yep. Yeah, so did the interior on that.
It would have been last when.
Yeah.
Well,
about a year and a half ago.
and a half ago.
Yeah.
I have, my dream is you always want to work with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do a car and have Sid do the interior in it before he retires.
Yeah.
When Carrie used to do interior, Steve Anderson, that worked at, he drove Cadzilla cross country for Hot Rod and worked for Good Guys. And he got us in touch, met at someplace. I don't know, might have been Blackie's Fresno or something.
Or a Roadster show.
Yeah, maybe. Trying to figure out how long ago we started going out there. But anyway, introduced Carrie to Sid. And whenever Carrie would get stuck, that, okay, we're going to show our age. He had a VCR tape, children, that you could watch on instruction. Then he had a book. And if she would get stuck doing something, she'd call and leave a message, and Sid would call her back. He was always like super awesome about the next generation coming. And man, I've talked to him at the Roadster show, and I have a lot of respect for that guy, big time.
Great.
Well, and the coolest thing on the 33 was we took the car to Grand National that year. It was kind of a long trip to get to Sid's, but it worked out good. We took the car to Grand National. It was in Building 7 with no interior, but the doors were shut. You couldn't see it. And then it was going to Sid's after that. And so Sid came over to look at the car. I don't know if he'd seen the car, photos of it before, but so he comes over to look at it, and he's kind of checking it out. And I'm like, so Sid, is there anything we need to talk about? Like any challenges you foresee? Things, forks in the road, we got to figure out stuff. And he's like, no, I'll just make it match the car. And that was it. And just let Sid do his thing, and it turned out incredible.
Did you pick the color of the material, or did you let Sid do all that?
Yeah, so that's really the only thing we picked was the color of the material and the color of the carpet. But as far as the styling and anything else, that was all to Sid and Mark and Rich that worked for him.
Yeah, Sid's definitely one of those guys that says, I got this, let me do my thing. You let Sid do his thing.
Yeah. And you won't be disappointed.
And he's quick.
Yeah. And
that made some magazines too, right? Wasn't it in Riders? Or was it in Hop Up?
It was in Hop Up, yeah.
Hop Up,
Yep,
yeah.
it was in Hop Up, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Marcy came into town and we just traveled around the Detroit area and photographed it. It was in the wintertime, so
put it in Vincetta Garage.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. So
yeah.
Oh, cool.
It was cool to say we had a car in Vincetta and then we went back and had lunch or had dinner
had dinner there.
about where the car was parked.
Yeah.
We're speaking of Marcy and Hop Up. We should be about due for another quarterly coming up, shouldn't we?
I think so. I think
they're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, she does a great job with keeping that history alive and
The whole group
the
does.
process and what that magazine. I'm a magazine nerd, so
Yeah.
I think she does a great job with that. What she does with Hop Up.
Yep.
She'd be a good one to get on here too. Every time when we interview somebody, I come up, we mention like 3 or 4 other people. And,
Yeah.
Well, and Marcy has like such a long background, like in music. You'd never know. Like I think she was in a pretty accomplished like punk rock band. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a big punk rock guy, so super rad. Another guy, maybe you can pull some strings to help me get Josh Shaw on here.
Oh yeah. We're gonna see him tomorrow night. We're going down to Woodward with him.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would love to have him on here. One time, I would love to have him draw me a shop shirt sometime.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he looked at me and he goes, "No, I only do it for friends."
Okay.
So, but he goes, "If I would keep drawing shirts for everybody, that's all I would do." And that guy,
another huge respect to what he can do, anything that he wants to do.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys that just seems like, oh, we have a friend that jokes, the Olympics was just on, and I'm going to train for something. I'm going to be in the next Olympics. But I think Josh Shaw could probably do that if he put his mind to it, because I just think he just does it. I don't know. So
breakdancing.
he could, well, they kicked breakdancing out because that Australian girl screwed it up for everybody. So I could breakdance like that Australian girl. Yeah.
No, you couldn't.
No.
Because you couldn't get off the floor.
It's probably true. I need help getting up. Can I get a spot? So okay, that the green 5 window is do you still have that, or is that gone too?
Yes, I got that. I actually drove it to work today.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. It's just an awesome car. Just, like I said, the other cool thing about that car, it's got a torsion bar chassis, and I'd never messed around with torsion bars before, but with knowing Gary Schroeder through Dan and Ashley, I kind of picked Gary's brain. Jackie Howard's talked to him a lot, and got enough confidence out of those two to figure out, well, I'll build a torsion chassis for that car, and that car rides phenomenal.
Really good.
And then
I want to do a torsion bar too. Well, wasn't the last time I was in Tulsa because Jackie was moving. But when we go in for some BMX stuff, I'm going to try to go by his shop, and I would love him. We got a little roadster that we've had on paper for a few years. That I'd love to see if he could help me figure out the torsion on that.
Yeah.
Or, Corey and Ashley could just fly down for a long weekend and help me with the chassis. So
you know what? I think there's some level of intimidation because it's maybe foreign technology to people, but it's super simple. It's very simple. And
I spent some time. I got a buddy that raced dirt track cars, Bill, and he took me to the shop where he drove a few races, not a lot. He drove a sprint car and stuff, and of course, Profile BMX, they make sprint car parts and the arms and stuff for sprint cars, or they used to, and it's just so clean looking is what I like. It's and it screams badass race car too.
Well, and the thing I liked about it was the ability to tune the chassis to ride how you want to ride. With leaf springs, you're kind of at the mercy of the spring rate. You can maybe take some leaves out or add some, but it's a pain. It's a pain to have to do that on a finished car, right? If you're not happy with how it sets or how it rides. Torsion bars, you literally just change the bar to a different diameter, at a different rate. And if going in, you can do all the math, which is what all the pro touring guys do when they're doing coilovers. You can do the math, and actually it spits out what spring rate to use, and that's essentially what I did on that car. And literally out of the box, it drove really nice, which kind of blew my mind. I didn't have to change anything in it.
See, I always joke that I can't do math because I was pretty in high school. If you're pretty, it's easier to be dumb. Life's easier. But look, she doesn't believe me out. She says I was just dumb. But figuring out the spring rates, that's just something I learned from being around my buddy in high school that did a stock car, And you figure that out. I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but I bought part of a suspension from a suspension company. And nowhere in the box, it comes with these set of coilovers. They took them out of the box. There was no part numbers. So I emailed my sales guy and I go, hey, I need at least a part number so I can look up what the recommended ride height range is this coilover is. And he's like, what? We've never had anybody ask us that. It's I call bullshit on that. They got to, unless maybe they've left those coilovers in the box before, and then you can just, get on the Google machine. I don't know. Does somebody with an AOL and a Hotmail, do you guys know? Do you have Google up there?
We're still on Ask Jeeves, I think.
No. Wow. I didn't forgot about that one. And but you just got to figure out, and especially when you build something to sit right and the stance and cutting stuff. We had to do a lot of math, and probably had to ask some questions from somebody that's better at math than me. But doing that Chevelle, I had to figure out a lot of the spring rates and stuff. And a lot of people, a lot of builders anymore, they kind of forget that when they're ordering. I mean, it's good and it's bad that we have the ability now, and you guys are old enough to remember that there wasn't Morrison and Roadster Shop and Fat Man and all those, and Scott's Hot Rods, all those chassis. I mean, we're pretty lucky if you got the money, you can just order a pretty badass chassis. And they'll send you a print. I want to change the ride height, and they just build it. So if you got the money, it's easier to do that. And I think a lot of that technology of the smartness of the math and the ride height and the spring rates and the bounce and rebound are lost in some of these guys unless they're building an autocross car.
Yeah.
So then, are you working on another vehicle now? I know you caused a lot of grief in our household. Last year, Carrie goes, "Did you see they surprised Ashley with her own vehicle?" And I'm like, "Well, you got a Corvair you've never finished the trunk in, so that's always the fallback." So tell us about the truck you got.
I seen it on Instagram for sale. Mike Scapolo had it in Colorado, and I'm like, oh man, I want that, but I knew I couldn't afford it at the time. So behind my back, him and my dad, they ended up getting it, surprising me with it.
We bought it for her. But you've liked 20.
I've liked 20. I've always said I want a 28, 29 Roadster pickup, and that was just the perfect one. I had history, and it was cool. You know, it wasn't it didn't need to be a full build. So
yeah, it was just an old hot rod. It had been parked since '64, but like it was kind of a documented hot rod that went on a cross country road trip in like '62, and there's photos from it.
Photos from it. There's newspapers stuffed in the door from the road trip.
Well, the newspapers are from Fresno, California, like in the late '30s. There's stuff.
Very cool. But so I know it's run in and drive it because you post pictures of you cruising it and stuff. Are you going to leave it like that, or are you going to try to restore it back to the way it was?
We're going to leave it like that because it's got history and.
Well, what's cool is the photos we have of it. It looks
exactly the same. So
the only thing we did is we ordered a bit more to give it, just.
I love 28 and 9 Model A trucks too, but I look like Herman Munster when I say that. I do not. I'm not fitting in one.
Yeah,
I had a good buddy that he bought a hot rod one here, with Bigs and Littles and ETs on it a couple years ago, and he's like, "Man, I'm gonna drive my kid, the baseball, and we're gonna go get ice cream." I go, "Dude, he's shorter than me, but he's my same size." And about 3 months, he goes, "Yeah, my knees can't handle it." That's as far as I can drive it, is going to the baseball park for the boy, and he's sold. I seen it at Louisville this weekend, but I got a buddy, speaking of historic hot rods, I've talked about him before. It's a 25-year-old buddy from Louisville, this Hunter Dietrich.
Yeah, I know Hunter.
Yeah.
Do you know the history on him and his dad's Roadster pickup truck?
No, I guess not. No.
It was. He sent me a picture. I didn't know it till hanging out at Louisville. That it was like a vehicle that was in Honk or Hop Up or Carcraft or something in the 60s.
Oh wow!
And so someday, they have the fenders that were on it then. So Hunter wants to put it back the way it was in the magazine. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
Be cool.
I knew it was built to look like that. I didn't know it was an actual historic older vehicle. So that's pretty cool.
Very neat.
Yeah. No, it's cool finding stuff like that. Because you can build new stuff today, but it's still cool to find a survivor that was an old hot rod. Yeah, we looked out that Mike came across that.
And he's always got good stuff. And then we thrashed on it for like 60 days to get it ready to go to the gathering at the Rock. So we took it there, and
just kind of did just a mechanical refresh. That's all I needed. Just new brakes, new plumbing.
Yeah,
just all the.
We have not done the gathering of the Rock yet.
No, we got to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they invited the Chevelle because it's hot rod enough that we could take it.
Yep.
Last year we were actually in Tulsa the same weekend. I got hired to do. It was the BMX Hall of Fame induction weekend.
Yeah.
And we were 40 minutes away from like the host hotel. The Friday night we thought I had to do some microphone work. We could have snuck away and hung out in the hotel parking lot.
I think I said, "Let's go," and you're like, "I'm tired."
Yeah, it was late at that time, and
you?
I'd announced race in the parking lot that day. You were just chilling. I was actually working. This year, they're different weekends, so I don't think we're going to make it back to Tulsa 2 weekends in a row this year.
Definitely.
One of these years, I know the good group of guys putting that on, and everybody says you got to go. And he kind of runs it like Kevin Anderson's Custom Car Revival that we've had on here in Indianapolis. He keeps his show at 200.
Yeah,
it's got to be accepted, no billet wheels, and it's got to try to keep it in a certain vein.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so cool.
Obviously, sometimes people get emotional about if their car's in or not, but literally the spectator lot is like 20 feet away. So even if you did it if whatever, for some reason your car didn't make the cut or wasn't the style what they're looking for, you can just go park it 20 feet over in the spectator lot, and you're literally in the show.
And you can go on the run Friday and hang out in the
Yeah.
parking lot. So it's pretty much,
Yeah, we almost brought the first year we were going to bring the 32 4-door that we built for Eric Hansen because it was in the Starbird Museum at that time in Oklahoma. So it wasn't that far away. It was about probably an hour and a half away in the museum, and we just didn't get away. I remember that first year that it happened. Kenny Davis called and he goes, "Dude, you've got, why aren't you here? This is the coolest thing ever." So
because it's fall.
yeah.
And fall means SEMA, and SEMA means hell.
And she has
yeah.
well, we're not doing anything for SEMA the last couple of years, but in September she runs events for big companies, and she pretty much stays in an RV for almost a month. They got 3 big events over 4 weeks. They have 1 weekend off.
Wow.
So it's a little rough for both of us to get away too. So.
And you just got back from Roadkill, didn't you? You had Roadkill.
I did.
Yeah.
That was a little cluster this year up
I heard that. Yeah.
I hope
Looks like
to
it
never
went
go
really
back
good.
to Pontiac, Michigan again.
Yeah, they
I say
actually,
that
but
wholeheartedly.
the first day of setup, the mayor finally said that, you can't run this on Woodward now.
Yeah. Heard that.
That's unofficial.
Allegedly.
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 Yeah.
Allegedly. I mean, people that follow it realize that you didn't race on Woodward, you raced at M1. But she said it ended up being good. The racers that were there thought it was amazing, and they had good traction, and they went really fast. Really fast.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. So.
Yeah. It was good. It worked out great.
So are you guys going to the Woodward Dream Cruise is actually this weekend, right?
Coming up
this weekend. We actually don't go the day of the cruise because it's crazy, but we're going down tomorrow night with a group like the Root Brothers and Josh Shaw and Colton from up in Saginaw and a couple others. And then we go to a party through his work Friday night.
Yeah.
So.
But Saturday, if you have a clutch, you stay away. Or you have a super beefy calf on your left leg, one or two. So it's best to stay away.
Well, the first year I went with it, and they ran that Roadkill drag race up there. It was the same weekend.
Yeah.
In Pontiac. And I went and helped. And then she slept in the rental car all day. And then I went and found the Jerry Dixie parking lot of the Road Tourians guys or whatever. And I walked around a couple of the main intersections and seen some stuff for a little bit. And I realized I don't really care to actually go on Saturday ever again. So
No.
Yeah. It's one of those been there, done that. I don't really care to go
it's
back.
kind of fun the week of because it's more, it's not so busy. You can park somewhere and, catch up with friends. But the day of, it's just it's a parking lot pretty much.
So without getting either one of you in trouble and saying too much, Ashley, what are you guys working on in the shop? I'm sure it's some vintage race car or something that you guys are building right now.
It's a remake, kind of a hot rod version of a French car from the early teens. We put a little teasers up on Dad's social media, but we'll be putting a lot more up pretty soon. So it's got some pretty wild details, and it should be probably finished next year, I'm thinking. And we may take the chassis out and debut that first.
So tell everybody what's your dad's Instagram that they can follow and see teaser pictures.
He is Dan R. Webb. So
Dan R. Webb.
Yep.
So absolutely incredible. I don't know if you realize that, but I like to mess with people every once in a while. And I walked up at the Roadster show this year, and I told your dad, and I go, man, this, it's kind of like this. People say, SEMA's the same time every year. You can start earlier. And I told him, I go, the Roadster show is always within a week or two apart. If you start on next year's project a little sooner, maybe you can find time to get it painted.
Yeah.
And luckily he knows who I am at this part, and he just kind of laughs. And he goes, I ain't never painting another damn vehicle, he said.
I think he means it. But him and Craig Neff have a really good working relationship. So
I would love to get him on this podcast too. And I mean, what an incredible craftsman, but the cars that guy touched, it's ridiculous. And he lives in Virginia, is that right?
Yeah, he would probably do it, but I don't know if you could get him on the computer deal because they're kind of a little, like my dad. So Yeah.
So, Corey, tell everybody without getting in trouble some of the projects that you've been a part of and what you do a little more in depth on your day gig.
Well, my engineering career at GM's been based mostly around chassis engineering. So, if you see a Chevy Blazer or a GMC Acadia, stuff like that, I was actually the guy that was the engineer for like the shocks and springs on it. And then since then, I've done like some program management stuff. Got to work on some 6-gen Camaros, which was a lot of fun. And then now I'm doing off-road trucks. So my baby of the past few years, it's kind of cool because there's stuff I'm working on now that obviously I can't talk about, but it's exciting when we unveil it. It's not gonna be like, hey, for the past 3 years or 4 years, I've been working on this. And that was the Chevy Colorado ZR2. So I was doing off-road trucks, and then our ZR2 Bison, which was on top of that. And so it was definitely something that, that wasn't my background. I never did off-road stuff, but it's really the same passion of like making sure that all the suspension's good. You got to have a good tire. And then instead of a set and load, you need to set high. You just need some ground clearance. But so that's pretty exciting. We got to do some awesome off-road trips. So, there's off-road parks like Windrock, Tennessee. The off-road team went to Moab a bunch. I never went there, but the Glamis Sand Dunes in California. And then probably the peak one was we did the Rubicon Trail in Northern California. And so, we shipped trucks into Reno. We flew in, we picked them up, and, they're camouflage trucks. These are not out yet. We drove them to Lake Tahoe, stayed the night, and then the next day we got up and entered Rubicon. And for anybody who doesn't know Rubicon, it's like, I think it's still considered like the most difficult trail in the nation. It took us 2.5 days to go 12 miles. So you can walk it faster than you can drive it. And,
wow.
And once you go in, like, you're committed because there's nowhere to turn off and be like, I'm tapping out. It's either you turn around and try to go back the way you came in or continue through.
Yeah, I'm going to make a U-turn at the rest area.
And so, like, you got to go in, you got to have all your food. Obviously, you're camping on the trail. So we spent 2 nights on the trail, but it was a pretty fun experience.
So when you guys do that, how big of a team? You're obviously testing more than one vehicle, right? And then is there a team like following you with tools and spare parts too?
Yeah, but it's not as big as it might seem. Like we had 5 trucks, so there's 4 new trucks and a chase truck that was a current production one that had 2 technicians and, any parts that we thought we might break. And then if we broke some stuff that we didn't have, we had a stick welder and a generator. Fortunately, the trucks actually performed really well, so we didn't break anything. It's just a lot of times it's a mental challenge because you might have an obstacle. You got to figure out how to get a truck around. Because you're talking about boulders that might be 3 foot tall. You got to figure out how to get a truck over that. And, so it was a fun challenge. It was like there's nothing that I'd been around before, and just there was times where you'd be looking at something like, I don't know how in the hell we're going to get a truck through this. But we had.
I was not around that either, but growing up in Illinois, that every farmer had a 4-wheel drive, and we'd go mudding down the dirt roads, or pulling hay racks or something stupid like that. Yeah. And when I moved to Tennessee and I did the TV show with Power Block, Ian Johnson was in there, doing extreme 4x4, and now he's done 4-wheeler TV. Now he's changing to whatever. And man, there's some crazy off-road stuff. There's some fabricators in that industry, some serious. I learned a lot of respect, and I always called him a hillbilly or a redneck, because they were just out on the off-road, and I showed up for the day of filming, and I had a pair of bib overalls, a camouflage hat with a curled bill, and a t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off of it. And my producer says, "You can't wear that. You're making fun of these guys." I go, No. I borrowed all these clothes from my dad. So if you say that, you're making fun of my dad. So he let me wear the bib overalls and the hat because they were stuff that my dad actually gave me for this show. And I remember we went Wooley's Off-Road Park is just right down the road where most of that stuff was filmed if they didn't go on a big trip like Easter Jeep or something like that. And they put me in. It was like one of those funny Westerns that, all the other cowboys are on these elegant stallions, and here's the guy on the donkey. They put me in this piece of crap, underpowered, not very, almost stock suspension. It was like a Jeep Cherokee. Yeah. And, I look at them, they're crawling and they're doing all this stuff and they're getting out and they're throwing the winch onto a tree to pull them out. And they're like, okay, we're going to film you doing the same thing. So I looked at it were you riding with me?
Mhm.
And she goes, you're going to do it, aren't you? And I go, I'm going to. I went to the left and it just went, it was almost like a sidewalk. There was a few little ledges. And like, what are you doing? I go, isn't the point to get to the top the quickest or the easiest? So why break something or, be on my roof? And yeah, so I didn't have
What
to
we
film
were
with the
in
off-road.
would not have made it.
It would
That's
not.
what
They
were
wanted me to
trying
fail.
do.
They were setting me up to fail. Yeah. And then, like, I was riding with Ian later in the day, and we went down this crazy trail, and we did put it on its side and, like, cave in part of the side. And that was, like, one of the fan favorite off-road vehicles.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got hate mail because they blamed me. I was not driving. I was just riding in it, and I got hate mail because, oh, you hurt that, whatever. I don't remember what it was, but, yeah. So, yeah, it's a different skill of driving in that off-road stuff. So
Oh,
how
it
many
is.
miles is the Rubicon?
I think it's just shy of 12, but yeah, we will say 12. Yeah, and like I said, 2.5 days to get
In
through
12 miles.
it. Yeah. Like I said, you can literally
man.
go faster, you can drive it. But the coolest thing is, they're production trucks. Like we're not out there doing stuff that doesn't come on the truck when you buy it. Like it's literally you lower the tire pressure down, the air down, and that's it. And the coolest thing was
actually pretty impressive that they would test the vehicle like that at that extreme. It kind of is impressive to me.
Yeah, and the coolest thing is, you finally get through it. You kind of breathe a sigh of relief that you made it through. You air back up, and we drive to Reno. Like it's not throwing them on a trailer. It's like we just tackled Rubicon and we drove it like you're going to drive it to work. Back to
Cool. I got a buddy that works for Caterpillar back home in Peoria, Illinois, and he's part of the. They're not trucks that drive on the road, but the off-road vehicles, and he works in the emissions, and they do the same thing. Take them clear out in the desert, test the emissions and the cooling and all that stuff. So he's got some pretty cool stories in the Caterpillar side of the same thing. You can't talk about everything. And I remember one time it was right after we moved down here, and it was like made the news that Caterpillar missed their deadline for their emissions and Caterpillar got fined. And he goes, I was part of that team. But they didn't quite meet their deadline on what they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty cool gig. How long you been at General Motors now?
16 years. 16.
Wow.
So it doesn't seem like that. It's went by pretty fast, but it's been a good time. It's been a good experience. It's challenging, but I think that's what I enjoy about it. Like it's every day is something new to figure out how to it's problem solving at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Which is
So
really
it's not boring. You're not.
It's problem solving.
Yeah, you're not doing the same thing every day. You're not machining axles all day long.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So like right now, the projects you're working on, when will those be available? 4 or 5 years, you said? Is that how far you guys outwork?
Probably a little less than that. It varies by what you're working on. Everybody's trying to go faster and faster these days, but it's a few years out. So.
With the way some of the world's changing that I'm not happy with, some of the world, are you working on, are you any of the team that, so you can't get in trouble, don't say I can't talk about that. Are you working on any electric vehicle stuff?
I'm currently not, but, everybody's thrashing on everything. ICE is going to be around probably for a while. EVs here is going to be around. I think you're going to see there's going to be a multi-step approach to figuring out propulsion.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't hate the electric cars. I don't want to build a hot rod electric swap for somebody. We've had a company talk to us about doing it, and I told my buddy Zane, which you guys know, and me and Zane are like brothers. We talk weekly, and Zane talked down to me very poorly if I would build an electric car, hot rod. But we were in Scottsdale last year, and we had like a Kia electric. That's all they had. And it was fun around town for 3 days, playing with the different settings. And we never found a place we could charge it. So we just took it back and paid them taking a normal rental back without the fuel. So but it was fun, but I don't want to own one.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's times I think it'd be cool to have, some type of electric hot rod. I mean, there's companies doing driveline conversions, right, of putting electric powertrains and stuff. And I mean, if you think about it, like if at the end of the day, if you want power, like that's the most power you're going to get, and it's basically at idle. Like that's like the driving experience everybody wished they could have with a gasoline powered motor.
Yeah, if nobody understands it, you got to go find your local indoor go-kart place with the electric motors in it, and you'll get a whole different respect for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I got a couple other buddies that are building electric swap vehicles, but I don't know if they're paused or hitting them how hard. But yeah, I think the hybrid, the mix is probably the answer. Or once they figure, I mean, every year I remember at SEMA the year before COVID, I was on a speaking panel with the electric industry. I realized I was the old hot rod guy, and then they had Kyle Kuhnhausen was the young hot rod guy, if I say his name right, and then 2 electric motor companies. And the one was from Thailand, and they built a car over there, a Camaro, and had it in the tents out there because they were a new vendor.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we built that, then air freighted over from Thailand. So they were talking to me for the next 6 months about building their car for the States. I'm like, yeah, if somebody wants to pay me, I'd probably do that.
Yeah.
But I remember it was a 69 Camaro. There was no back seat in it because it was full of batteries.
Yep.
The trunk was almost full of batteries. Yeah. And they had the hood off, and the batteries was all the way to the bottom of where the hood would be.
Yeah.
Well, it was 1 or 2 years before COVID. So that's been 5 or 6 years ago. Well, the battery technology has gotten so much better in that time. It's probably half the size of the battery. So once they figure out the battery technology, which they will get to, that'll fit like a couple suitcases size. That's basically when they did the electric motor in the Project X, they had, what is the GM electric car? The Volt?
Well, that's actually a hybrid technically. It's no longer in production, but there's the Bolt that was full electric. But if you think about how fast technology moves along, right? Just think about like the small block came out in 55, 180 horsepower, right? And then by less than 20 years later, you had big blocks making over 500 horsepower. They were derated on paper, right? But to have that evolve like that, I mean, we're in the middle of that now. It's not fuel. It's electric powertrains. Yeah,
and then some guys have done a hydrogen car and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's cool that the evolving that when they did that electric motor in Project X. I'm a huge Project X fan because I'm a Tri-5 guy, and man, there was a lot of hate about that. But I told everybody. I did it. I was on the mic at a banquet at SEMA, and everybody said there was a whole table full of GM executives right in front of you where I couldn't see because there was a spotlight in my eyes, like the hot rod or the Armo banquet. And I'm walking from one side to the other, just killing time. And I was like, raise your hands if everybody's happy that they put an electric motor in there. And people were booing, and they're like, you said that right in front of the GM table. And I go, well, I didn't see any of them raise their hand either, But, if you think about Project X, that's what it's been since, 64, 67. It's the latest, greatest, the new Holly, the new Krieger SS, the new traction bar or whatever. I mean, so they had an electric motor in it for a couple of years now. It's got the big 632 GM, and someday it'll be something else. They might put a hydrogen motor in it, or who knows, because that's what a project car's for. So I'm glad it didn't stay electric, but I understand why they did it.
Yeah.
So what would the conversation be if somebody, again, he couldn't walk into Dan Webb's shop because he doesn't let everybody in the shop.
Especially you.
He does now.
Say, hey, Dan, I want to build an electric car. What would that conversation be like?
He'd probably be like, what?
So we've talked almost an hour and a half. We get to jabbering, and people's like, oh, does this 20 minutes or what?
Yeah.
I think I've said 4 words.
You just heckled them about their email is what you've basically done. Yeah. She gives me a hard time when we get done. She goes, you wouldn't give me time, but I do enough interviews. When I sense a low, I jump in real quick because I have tons of questions.
And he's already saying it, so I'm just like.
Do you have a question before I get to my next question?
Go for it. Okay, I will ask a question. You guys have mentioned several shows over and over again, but what is your favorite show to go to?
Well, there's a lot of great shows, but probably my 2 favorite are Grand National Roadster Show, because we get away from Michigan winter and see all of our friends, and Gathering at the Rock, because it's beautiful down there. It's at a Western ranch, and you take over the town, and a lot of great cars, good people. So those are my 2 favorite.
Corey, what about you? I'm not done.
Yeah,
I was gonna
I
add
mean,
what-
it's probably not a big surprise that they're my favorite too, since we do them together. But going down to Oklahoma, obviously, I enjoy having a car and using it as the machine that it is, right? So Oklahoma's like that. You're driving around. Friday's a big drive. Saturday you got to drive the show and stuff. So that's probably my favorite part. Is like, yeah, you got an old car, you're there with friends and stuff, but you're actually gonna go use it. You have a destination to go to, and maybe somebody has car trouble along the way.
I did
Yeah,
last
yeah, you had
year
car
in my
trouble.
Reds pickup. So.
And you got to figure out how to solve it and stuff. So
If you're going to
I
drive a hot rod, you're going to have to learn how to work on a hot rod.
Yeah.
I say that often. Yeah. So in both of those events, she doesn't always make it. She made it to a couple of days of the Roadster show. But she was out in the desert for Optima at what were you at?
King of the Hammers.
Yeah, King of the Hammers. And she came in. She looked like a desert dweller when she came into town. But both of those events, I've not been to the Rock, but I know the people that go there. And the same thing is, I love going to the Roadster show. But, I mean, we share a house with a bunch of dudes, a bunch of buddies. It's more, those events are about the people. Like, I go to the lead sleds because I like the custom guys.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the show's awesome, too. But just hanging out in the tent, hanging out with people, or going from tent to tent and talking to these guys, the cars are the first ingredient, but we keep going back because of the people.
Yeah.
If the people were all assholes, we probably wouldn't go back, right?
That's what I tell everybody. I mean, we each have our parents, but we don't have large families. So really, the car people are our families. So that
we've lived here in Tennessee for 13 years. She knows nobody in our town.
I know one. I know.
Well, your hair lady.
And
yeah, she pays for that. You believe it? She pays for that.
Yeah, the lady that does our massages, she's from town.
Yeah, and then I know the guys at Napa. I know the guy. I don't really know the guys at O'Reilly's as much. I know the guys a little bit at the welding store, but I don't know all their names. You just go in and tell dirty jokes for a few minutes when you get the stuff. And our friends live mostly up into Nashville, or our friends are at car shows, car races, or BMX races. Those are the people that, when we're home, we're working nonstop. My shop is locked. She wouldn't even let me paint my building. I was going to say, I don't let people in without an appointment. So if your dad if they call ahead of time, I usually let them in, but your dad's got one coming.
Okay.
The call, it goes to me, and then I have to filter it to you. And sometimes you answer my call.
You would meet Dan at the Napa store, then get you, because you know the code to get in the shop. You'd let him in.
I'd let him in.
Yeah.
So have you ever been to a cat show?
Never been to a cat show.
think they had one in
We
Detroit.
did that last year.
You have to put that on your list.
I think they had one like right before Autorama one year. So, but we've never.
We've seen it on Facebook one day, and we were home that weekend. It was last fall, wasn't it? And we're like, we should go to the cat show. And I'm like, what did you say? The cat show. I go, I've seen that too come up into my feed. So we got up. It was at the fairgrounds there where, the racetrack is, where we've seen sprint car races and everything, and they built new buildings. Nobody leaving that place did not have a smile. I don't care what generation, you guys are cat people. That's what we're saying. We talk about cats. I can't believe Turbo's walked by a couple of times.
That's why I had to disappear a minute ago. We have a cat situation.
What's going on?
You have a cleanup job.
Oh no.
We're in the process. Turbo has diabetes now. So we're in the transition of food change. Not good. That's what I could I smelled it. I'm like, there's something going on.
But our 1-year-old Axel is eating some of his food. So Turbo's been on his new food for 3 weeks. So he's over the diarrhea, but now Axel, so we have an accident.
You have a huge accident. You get sick. Last time I was dealing with it, he was gone. I dry heave when I clean the cat box.
Yeah, I'm a farm kid, so I can just pick up poop, and she's back there going.
So,
but we have the self cleaning things. Have you got those litter robot things yet?
No, ours cats are too scared. They wouldn't. They wouldn't get in it.
They have to do it pretty quick. We have 2 different brands of them.
I wasn't sure they were going to adapt to it, but Turbo adapted to it super quick, and then it broke, and I had to send it back, and he wouldn't use the litter box.
He was
I'm
mad.
like, dude, what's up? But now
So
this whole transition's
you have cats, right?
Yeah, we have 2 cats.
What's their names?
George and Model T. So
Why George?
Well, we named him Oreo because he's a Siamese, and he wouldn't respond to it. And one day he just called him like George for Curious George, and he responded to it. So
he started to it.
But he's
I'm going to change her name because I say Carrie and she usually just ignores me. So I can change. Can I change my wife's name like you can a cat?
I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, you called me
that cat is seriously a person. That's what people come here. They're like, that cat's like Chris Farley reincarnated. Seriously, wild.
Our new one that just turned 1, he is batshit crazy.
Yeah.
But back to the cat shows. If you ever get the opportunity, it seems like very odd.
Mm-hmm.
But we had the best time that day. And one of the things, I'm just going to apologize to anybody that's watching this if you go to cat shows and you show at cat shows. But you know, like the people that used to show on the ISCA circuit,
Like from the late 80s, and they're like slightly eccentric clothes and stuff.
and you're wondering where those people went to.
Yeah.
That's where they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
With still some of them still with the same awards clothes from the 80s. Yeah.
It was so awesome. We had so much fun that day. Like, we didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Like, there were areas, oh, we're going to go over here. And then we couldn't find each other because it.
And the people are so friendly. If you want to talk about their cat, and they had every type of cat that they could possibly, and they had toys and all this stuff. And then Carrie on the way home says, "This is amazing." I mean, you think about it. If they really were ISCA show car people, well, now they're traveling the country with their best furry buddy in their little SUV and no car trailer and no jack stands and spotlights and all that stuff. That's just what we thought was humorous. And she started Googling how much do you think a cat judge at these, they have to be in the right, what do you call it? Sanctioned cat shows.
Sanctioned.
Wow.
Yeah, they are sanctioned. And if you have, 5 to 6 years, what do you call it when you do something and you do it and you, I'm blank on that word.
I don't know what you're talking.
Seniority or tenure?
Not really
Experience?
Experience. Yeah, that's a big word for me.
Big one.
But like 5 or 6 years experience working your way up to the bigger cat shows.
Yeah.
You want to take a guess what she found on the Google? How much a cat judge makes?
No idea.
We tell you this. Ashley's going to be putting her notice in with her father tomorrow. You could make $80,000 being a cat judge.
That's like working at Buc-ee's. Have you seen the signs at Buc-ee's? Yeah.
Yeah.
Better things in life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I can manage
that's
As a cat judge, you get to hold all of these cats.
Yeah, you get to pet
Pet
everybody's
them,
cat.
Play with them. That is like the best job ever. And be judgmental.
Be judgmental. Yeah, so if you see a cat show in your area, we highly recommend it. And yes, we said that earlier. I don't know if Ashley wanted that out, but she is the person behind the Instagram page called Cat Rodders.
Well, I didn't start it. I just have the keys to it right now. It was over. It was over some alcohol at Gathering at the Rock with beer with the Root brothers, the Barolero brothers, and Brian Willingham. So I'm not the creator of it, but I've kept
Our kitties have been on there before.
They have.
Our kitties have been on there.
Yeah.
They're not shop cats, but they allegedly have been on there playing with Hot Wheels. So they don't want to get
I've had people write and say, "Why wouldn't you feature my cat? I've sent you photos." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
Actually, when our cats were on there, that was more exciting than some big automotive page sharing one of our cars or something. It's like,
He was really excited.
and we have to show them. It's like, look, you're on Cat Rodders, and then they're like, "Yep, I'm hard to live with now." It gets their head gets really big.
Yeah.
So okay, we'll wrap this up. Are you guys currently working on any other secret project at the home shop?
Well, we just finished up. He did the 57.
Yeah, just a little.
That's right.
Yeah, cool Survivor. Just 2-family-owned car out of Southern Kentucky. Just lowered it, put some wheels on it. And we're working on the Silver Sapphire restoration. Yeah. The 32 Ford 3-window coupe that is kind of cool because the car really captures different audiences. You have the hot rodders that know it from the cover of Hot Rod magazine, and I think it's June of '61 or July of '61. And then the general public knows it because it's on the cover of the Beach Boys album, Loaded as Coupe, in '62. So a friend of ours owns that car.
You just flew out to Hollenbeck's, right? Because Daryl's painting that right now.
Just got back last night. Made a quick trip out to the Bay Area. Daryl's pretty much done with it, so just went out to make sure everybody's good at everything. And of course, I mean, Daryl painted it. It's excellent. So it'll be coming back to us here pretty soon.
Ready next week. So
yeah, for final assembly. So we'll get it back together. I'll get it running again, and then I think Sid's going to do the upholstery in that. So
very cool.
It's pretty cool. It's we spent a lot of time poring over photographs. The best thing was through Tim Sutton. He got us in touch with Drew Harden, and eventually that led us to the archivist at the Peterson Museum, who found Eric Rickman's film still in the archives from when he photographed the car in March 17th of '61. So that became like the gold source of what the car should look like, because that's the version everybody knows the car. Because months before and months after, the car was constantly evolving. So, but Kirk, the owner, that was a snapshot in time that he wanted the car to look like. So it's really
a lot of those cars evolved. I did a historic restoration once on a 32. And, I called your dad and he helped me. Oh, you got to call this guy for some hardware and this guy looking for a part and stuff like that. And a lot of those cars, they didn't think they were creating history back then. It was just their car. Yeah. So one year the wheels or the white walls might have been a different width, or like on this 32 that we did. Oh, it had chrome headlights on it. Then it had painted, and the owner picked, I want this time with these 4 pictures. And like we were blowing up pictures. The car that we did was, the Pete Henderson car, and the kid was he was 19 years old when he did that car, and he didn't know how to build a car. So we blew these pictures up and ran the wiring like he did, and it was just like a 19-year-old kid with his first hot rod. And I know that got changed, and somebody cussed me. He was like, "You don't even know how to wire a car." And I was like, "Dude, we put it like the owner that was writing the check says, I want it done just like this era in time." And it was it was in Riders Journal and stuff like that, but it was done a little bit different at that time. And when we got it, it was in a trailer accident before the guy bought it that we did it. And I really I'm a magazine nerd, so I collect stuff against my wife's wishes. But you got to have that if you're going to do a restoration of a car that was in a magazine and you want that correct snapshot in time, or like something that Ashley's dad's doing. You want to build something influenced by that. So you've got to go back, and they don't have everything online and scanned. So the old magazines are still good. The Peterson archive is incredible what you can find on there for a lot of help.
Yeah. So no, it's been a pretty exciting car. It's been like a 4-year project so far, but
it's getting close.
Yeah, it's getting close, and I think it's very accurate. I'm pretty proud of the accuracy. Just all the little details. I mean, we spent 2 years trying to find some coil wrap they put on the front brake hoses. And fortunately, a guy here in town, Bill Bryan, was able to get us connected to some dude that had a motorcycle shop in Alabama who had 2 bags of this stuff on a shelf.
We had to get blue spark plug wires.
Blue plug wires. That hasn't been made since the 60s.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, and that car is basically what I would group that into, not just a traditional car, but almost like a show rod.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of cool because it began as a hot rod. It was drag raced, and then it evolved into a show car. And then, of course, that was really the version everybody knows was the epitome of the show car, with the nose and the side fins and all that stuff. So it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's probably one of the most recognizable hot rods.
Yeah, and because obviously non-car people because of the Beach Boys album. So is there anything in your bucket list that you would like to build for yourselves in the future?
I don't know.
I mean,
you're toying around with another 32 Roadster, possibly.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you asked me 2 years ago about a 57 Chevy, I probably wouldn't have said that. But
I thought he was crazy. I was like, what? What are you talking about?
My first car was a 55. I MC the Tri-5 show every year. I message you guys, hey, you should come to the Tri-5s. And allegedly Corey goes, do I have to buy
some white New Balance to come. That's mostly Corvette shows. The Tri-5 show, there's every Tri-5 in every which way you could possibly think of. Vintage race cars, the junior stockers. You know, they got wheel standers, and then the big fancy show cars and stuff. And you know, the Ken Reister brought his Nomad this year, and it's a crazy show. There's 2,700 Tri-5s, and everything is different. Like everybody, there's many different ages of people into Tri-5s, and yours would. I gave my best hot rod pick to Kenny Davis this year, and yours would have been on the list because
Kenny's car is kind of what got me turned around on doing a Tri-5 when I saw it at Oklahoma, I think last year.
Yeah.
He had it there. It's like, yeah, that's a good looking car, and you know that's one of the cars, the Survivor, right? And so yeah, we have Kenny to thank for that.
Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, and you got magnesium wheels on your 57 too, right?
Yeah, yeah. That was, you know, on the cars. Like, there's always cool stories. That's one thing I enjoy about, like, when they're like having Bill and Donnie help chop the 33 or whatever. The 57, I wanted some magnesium 5-spokes. I found a set on Facebook Marketplace in Columbus, and I called the guy, and like, you know, usually on, like, you know, old vintage parts like that, you kind of want to know where that guy got it from. So, you know, of course, I asked the question, hey, you know, hey, how'd you get these wheels? And he's like, well, I bought a 65 Corvette in 1967, and these were on it. I'm like, all right, that could be a BS story, but it's good. You sold me. And so, no, I mean, that's a cool story now. That's going to be tied to that car.
Yeah. And Tri-5s are good. I mean, they're not as affordable as they used to be, but that's a good car that you can get in. Like a 32, you put some horsepower in it. You got to update the suspension and the chassis so much, and the wiring. And a decent Tri-5, you can just hop in and go. And everybody makes suspension lowering stuff and upgrades. And it's as I say, it's not really a starter car anymore because they're not cheap like they were. Yeah. And I paid $100 for my first one from my great grandpa. And but yeah, they're a good starter car, and you can throw a family in them. You know, there's room in the back for all your cats to a cat show.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's what the fun part. Like, if we have friends in town,
just load up.
Yeah, just, you know, they climb the back seat, whatever. You can have a trunk full of stuff and go drive somewhere. And, you know, that's one. I guess that's one downside to early Fords, unless you have a sedan. You know, it's usually you know, tight quarters for two people. So the 57 has been kind of cool. For this summer, we had guests a couple times, and you know, hop in the car and go somewhere.
Yeah, so that's your late model.
Yeah, it's late model.
Yeah. We know that people blank on their names right now. They run the Newport Engineering, the wiper motor company. Super cool older couple. And I remember I was with you in Milwaukee for the CarCraft show. I rode up with you, and they were there with a booth for their wiper motors. And you know, they notoriously, everything that they drove to all these shows for years were pre-48 stuff.
Yeah.
And he was coming up, and he was mad as hell. He's like, I knew I shouldn't have drove my late model. I drove the new car, and I'm having troubles with it. If I would have drove, I think they put like 200,000 miles on like a 47, 48 Ford Coupe through the years, hauling their little booth and their pop-up. They would all fit in there. He goes, you think you could come and help me? I was like, yeah, I'm not really helping Carrie right now. I'll come help you and see. He says, what's the matter? He goes, something in the suspension. It's got airbags on it. You know, and I'm thinking I'm going to get over there and it's going to be like a later model Lincoln with air suspension on it. Yeah. No, it's a 67 Nova wagon with air ride on it. And I don't even know. I mean, it had lots of miles on it. They bought it built. Yeah. And I was like, the airbag was just rubbing. If I would have done that, I would have never made it out of the city limits of where my shop is. And we tried everything to get a bag, and end up being the guys from Painless got a trailer and hauled it home for them. So that was they were mad because that was seriously their newest car they owned was a 67 Nova wagon. I was like, that's pretty hardcore, but super rad. Yeah. So anything you guys want to add before you wrap this out? You want to thank your husband? You want to thank your wife? Anything?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
You want to thank Hot Rodding for bringing you guys together?
Yeah. Thank all our friends in Hot Rodding and the people that put on the great events and the magazines that are still around and that make our industry what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you think about Corey's got a real job, right? He's got a real job. But we work in the industry and we go to all these events, and to the rest of the world that aren't into this, and I posted this before on social media, and they go home and see some of the people that you used to grow up around, and they're like, so you still messing with old cars? And they picture some guy in a double wide with a Vega with no hood or something like that. It's like we're not normal to the rest of the world, but that's why we stay in our little circles, and that's where our friends are.
That's what, like growing up in school, I never knew what to tell people what my dad did for a living. It was always kind of like, how do you explain that? Or like, if my car was in something, I never, like in high school, I did not want people to know, because it's like, it's just hard to explain what we do, kind of, in a way. Yeah.
So you just say, I mean, your dad would be totally okay if you would tell people back then, he's just a welder.
Yeah. That's true. I just never knew how to explain,
Yeah, he would be fine with that and take it as a compliment if you say that he's a welder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Automotive artist, and then you just lose people. Yeah. So you got anything else, Carrie?
I know, I'm going to take your question. One trip, non-automotive, where would you go?
Gosh, I don't
Anywhere around the world.
We've never had a non-automotive trip.
And even non-automotive trips turn into automotive
trips, visiting a shop, or picking up parts. Yeah. So I don't know.
Because like Rob Ida, but it was car related. He goes, "Oh, I want to ship my Porsche to like Swiss, cruise through the Alps, and with skis on the top." And I was like, "Well, it's still car related." And he goes, "Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?"
Yeah. I don't really have desire to travel outside the country, but I think like a cool road trip to some of the national parks would be cool. So, but we've done that in a roadster too. So I think it'd be weird not doing something car related for us. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about like all of our friends are somehow in the car industry. So if you're going to go see them anyways, it's probably somewhat related to cars. So we're just used to it.
Yeah. We went to a beach a couple years ago with her family, and I get twitchy after a couple hours of relaxing. So I saved like 3-4 months worth of car magazines, sat in the shade on the beach while they're all playing. And Carrie's one of them idiots that somebody showed her a video. They were screaming at her because she had sharks swimming around her, like baby sharks. So
it wasn't my time to go.
But
so, okay, we want to thank Ashley and Corey Talbert.
Thank you
for being
on having us. It's great seeing you. We'll see you guys pretty soon. So
I think I messaged both of you in the same day, and at first I didn't hear back from Corey, so I think I messaged Ashley, and I think the question was, would you guys like to be on our podcast, or are you too cool for that? Like we've been really lucky getting people on here that haven't done, like we got Tom Taylor, and Dave Shutton doesn't do many. And he goes,
hey, the Tom Taylor one, I mean, that was really cool. That was
I still don't know how I got that happened, and he wants to do a part 2 and save with Dave Shutton. He doesn't hardly do interviews, but I call him one of my hot rod brothers, and he goes, "I hate that stuff. That stuff's so stupid. But I'll do one for you." So I was like, almost a compliment. I don't know. So I'm a history nerd, so I just like to get people's stories out there and make an excuse to visit with friends.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you for being on the Strange Motion Way, and honored to call you guys friends and keep doing rad stuff.
Cool. We'll catch you guys later.
Thank you.
The Strange Motion Way podcast, brought to you by Royal Purple Synthetic Oils.
Royal Purple premium synthetic motor oils and high-performance chemicals have been designed to improve performance in all conditions and provide cleaner operation, better mileage, and decreased oil change frequency. That means less oil changes. With products available for your gasoline and diesel engines, Royal Purple is the obvious choice for your performance needs. Drive with Royal Purple, the synthetic expert.